September of 2012, we left our home port of Seattle on a trip around the world in our Nordhavn 52 Dirona. The Standing Mast Route is a series of mast-up routes through the Netherlands' inland waterways and canals, extending from the border with Belgium in the south to the German border in the north. Our 2.1 meter draft was a bit much to take the northern route into Amsterdam, but we were able to take the southern route all the way to Antwerp. We departed Amsterdam in mid-February from City Marina iDock. We were moored in one of the tightest spots we've ever been in, and working out with the winds gusting to 25 knots was challenging. The 4 videos show, from clockwise at upper left, the view from the bow, stern, starboard, and port cameras as we depart the berth. With a boat moored close behind us, we couldn't go back at all. We needed to move over to the far side of the slip to get enough space to back out beside the boat behind us. James worked from the aft helm to bring the stern to port and slide out, while I kept an eye on the bow. Once we'd cleared the boat behind us, the next challenge was getting the stern around quickly enough to clear the catamaran, coming into view at upper right, that extended out into the fairway. Once we'd cleared the catamaran, we could continue backing out through the fairway. We've just switched the video from the near view to the far view side cameras, and you can see Dirona rocking slightly in the wind gusts. As we approach the stone wall behind us, we need to back around 90 degrees to bring the bow towards the exit. We called the harbour master before departing the slip, and he's already got the bridge going up for us, visible at top left. A final challenge in departing was that the boat moored dead ahead beyond the bridge gave us little room to turn the corner. It was really tight getting out. The stern, visible at upper right, is up against the pilings, while the bow was nearly overlapping the other boat. And we're away. We had another wonderful winter in Amsterdam, but it's great to be underway again. Before entering the North Sea Canal, we waited for a barge to clear the channel. Across the river to port, you can see the white Film Museum, and beside it to the right, the former headquarters of Royal Dutch Shell. We're now heading west in the North Sea Canal. Ferry traffic is heavy at 8:20 in the morning on a weekday. To starboard, we're passing Damen Ship Repair Amsterdam, a member of the Damen International Shipyard Group. The repair, conversion, and refit facility can handle vessels up to 250 meters long. There's always plenty of commercial barge traffic in the North Sea Canal, and today is no exception. Note the two cars carried at the stern on this barge. This is typical for inland barges. The cars are used like tenders and dropped off ashore to allow the operators to travel on land. We're now turning to port to leave the North Sea Canal and start the Standing Mast Route. The route involves passing through literally dozens of bridges. Some open on demand, while others open a few times a day on a fixed schedule. And in the winter, some of those fixed schedule bridges, including this first one, require a reservation be made 24 hours in advance. We arrived about a half an hour early for our 10 a.m. reservation and docked on the waiting pier for our opening. Precisely on time, the bridge control lights changed from red, meaning no passages allowed, to red and green, meaning an opening is in progress. When the bridge is fully open, the light changes to green. A short distance beyond the first bridge is a second bridge that also required a 24-hour reservation. We arrived about 15 minutes early and passed through exactly on time. Next up is our one lock of the day, Royerssluis. A commercial barge was already in the lock ahead of us and the bridge had closed, but the lockmaster reopened the bridge to let us lock through together. The water level change in this lock was quite small and didn't require any real work to tend the lines. Here we're giving a wave to the lockmaster to thank them for passing us through. We're now approaching the first of 5 bridges in the city of Haarlem that we'll pass through before stopping for the night. Fortunately, these bridges all operate on demand, so we don't need to make a reservation in advance or time our arrival. The commercial barge traveling in front of us was able to pass under the fixed span, but we need an opening. The second Haarlem bridge is too low for the commercial barge as well, so they've already got an opening in progress by the time we arrive. The next bridge has 2 opening sections. One lifts a few feet for the barge to pass under, while we pass under on the far right where it is fully open. And beyond is a railway bridge that is already open for us, and that bridge the barge can pass under without an opening. We're now close to downtown Haarlem. The windmill de Adriaan has been a prominent feature in the Haarlem skyline for centuries. Visible in the background at right is Haarlem's 16th century Gothic church, St. Bravo. The next corner looks tight for a long commercial barge. The operator of the barge in front had to put the stern nearly against the starboard shore in order to turn enough to get straight on for the next bridge. This will be our final bridge for the day, and we're moored for a couple of nights in downtown Haarlem, just beyond. We didn't cover much ground today, only 12 nautical miles, but after passing through 9 bridges and a lock, we were ready for a break. When we visited Haarlem last year, the idea that we could bring Dirona here through the inland canal seems incredible, and it still felt pretty amazing to actually be there. Haarlem is a wonderful town to visit, with unique museums, historic canals, and beautiful centuries-old churches. We enjoyed visiting last year, and it was great to spend some more time here. On the second day of our trip from Amsterdam to Antwerp, we continued further south through the Netherlands canals to the city of Leiden. The Haarlem bridges open at 9 a.m. for recreational boats. In the summer, there is enough traffic that recreational boats must bunch up and travel in a convoy to avoid having the bridges open all the time. But the convoy doesn't run in the winter, so we can pass through whenever we want, except for restrictions during rush hour. At the first bridge, we pulled over to the side to allow a large commercial barge to pass through. It seemed impossibly large to get through the bridge, but it slid through town without touching anything. Traveling through downtown Haarlem was magical. The canals are narrow and intimate, and you can almost touch the buildings on either shore. In Haarlem, one bridge operator manages several bridges and travels with the boats as they move through town. If you look carefully on the left, you'll see the bridge operator arriving by bicycle and climbing up into the tower to begin opening the bridge. Some beautiful houseboats are on this section of the canal. Our fourth bridge of the day. This is our fifth bridge of the day and the ninth and final one managed by the city of Haarlem. Coming up on the left is the Royerssluis Museum, housing the world's largest steam engine. It was one of 3 pump houses built in the 1840s to drain Haarlem Lake. The pride of the museum is the working pump machinery. Once powered by steam boilers, the pump now is electrically driven for demonstration purposes. We had a fabulous time touring it on last year's trip to Haarlem and never expected we'd be bringing Dirona through the same canals. We were super excited to be here. Traffic backed up quickly on the Crucius Bridge when it opened for us to pass through. The next part of the run was through a mostly rural landscape with small towns and several bridges. The canal is running well above the ground level to starboard. The highway and railway bridges at Cog only open a few times a day, and in the winter a reservation must be made 24 hours in advance. We arrived about a half hour early for our booking and tied off to the waiting pontoon. The large blue building ahead is the Fedship Cog shipyard, one of two owned by the Van Lent family. The second is the newly built Amsterdam shipyard. The yard produces about 2 ships a year of up to 100 meters in length. We're now passing through the Cog Lakes, a popular recreational boating area in the summer, but we're the only ones out on this cold and windy February afternoon. We've diverted a short distance from the Standing Mast Route now to visit the town of Leiden. This is the second to last bridge we'll pass through today. The narrow and intimate Oude Rijn Canal leads into downtown Leiden. Our 16th and final bridge of the day opening for us, with the cruise boat River Princess following behind. We'd only traveled 17 miles today, but having passed through nearly one bridge per mile, we were ready to stop for the day. Unfortunately, docking in Leiden proved to be a challenge, particularly with winds blowing in the mid-20s. An alongside berth was available at the western end of the harbor, perpendicular to the blue sailboat visible at bottom right. But large pilings set off from the dock would have resulted in a several-yard gap between us and the dock, making getting on and off a challenge. So we decided to try backing into the slip on the other side, next to the blue sailboat, once the River Princess had passed behind us. We almost fit, but didn't have quite enough room to turn in the fairway to enter the slip. At this point, we figured we'd just take the easy spot against the cement wall, near the bright blue car at bottom right. This didn't work either, as we touched bottom while still a couple yards off the wall. We eventually called the harbor master, who directed us to an overflow park area a short distance away. We tried to moor alongside, but overhanging trees prevented us from getting within a couple yards of the dock. We found a gap in the trees further down that was just big enough for the boat, but shallow water held us off the dock instead. Our sixth attempt along a street opposite the park was finally successful. We had no power or water there, but that's not a problem because our generator with auto start will keep us fully powered and comfortable. We were very happy to have eventually found a spot and were looking forward to exploring the city. Vibrant and historic Leiden is home to the oldest university in the Netherlands and has numerous excellent museums and canal-side restaurants amongst striking centuries-old buildings. On our way south from Leiden, the first 5 bridges that we'd pass through are open in the morning between 6 and 6:45, then closed for rush hour until 9:30. So we got an early start in the dark, just before 6 a.m., in the hopes that we can get through them all and not be delayed for a couple of hours. The first bridge was already opening for us as we approached, and we passed through the fifth at 6:44 a.m., just making it through all 5 bridges before they closed for rush hour. The early morning pass through Alphen on Rijn was among the prettiest of the entire trip. With little wind, the lights of the buildings along the narrow canal reflected in the still water, and all was calm and quiet. Occasionally, a full-size reflection of Dirona was visible when we passed a building with an all-glass face. We fortunately didn't encounter any opposing traffic in the narrowest sections, but a little to the south, at Boskoop, we moved over to allow an oncoming commercial barge to pass. Here we are waiting for an opening of the Gouda railway bridges. We didn't need to make a reservation in advance, but the bridges open roughly once every 2 hours, and we had to wait about an hour. As we waited, a commercial tug passed by. It didn't seem there was enough clearance for them to make it, and we were hoping for an early opening, but they just managed to fit under both bridges. On exiting the Julianasluizen, we passed from the interior canals and into the Hollandse IJssel River. The lock, completed in 1936, is a national monument. The Hollandse IJssel is a tributary of the Rhine River, and commercial barge traffic was notably heavier here than in the interior canals. The Algera barrier is a storm surge barrier built as part of the Delta Works protection system following the disastrous North Sea flood of 1953 that killed 1,836 people in the Netherlands. The barriers were dropped down to block the waterway and prevent flooding on extremely high tides. Our 9.1-meter air draft is just a bit too high to pass under the 8.5-meter barriers, so we need to wait about a half an hour for an opening of the bridge and lock at rate. We still have more bridges ahead, but most we can fit under now and don't need an opening. The bridge at Alblasserdam has a clearance of 12 meters, plenty of room for our 9.1-meter air draft. We moored for the night just south of the city of Dordrecht, on a recreational berth within a commercial barge harbor right off the main waterway. The harbor is basically like a highway truck stop for commercial barges, who are allowed to stop for up to 3 nights, whereas recreational boats are only allowed to stay for one night. We enjoyed being tucked in with the commercial barges and loved the view to the passing traffic just outside. On our fourth day of travel between Amsterdam and Antwerp, we passed through two locks and reached saltwater again, the first time in 4 months. Here we are entering the yacht chamber at the Volkerak Lock. Vessels that cannot clear the fixed 18-meter bridge above us must use the commercial locks to the east. The lock will take us through the Volker Dam, built between 1957 and 1969 as the fifth project of the Delta Works protection system, put in place following the disastrous North Sea flood of 1953. A commercial boat rode through with us, the lock doors closing behind once the vessel was inside. Now we're at the Phillips Dam as the sailing vessel Mustache exits one of the two recreational boat chambers of the Kramer locks. It's one of the few recreational boats we've seen underway since leaving Amsterdam. A patrol boat came into the locks behind us, and after riding through the recreational locks with us, they went over to the south side and returned to the Volkerak through the commercial locks. When we exit the Kramer lock, we're back in saltwater again for the first time in 4 months. Here we are passing along the 4.5 mile Phillips Dam, another Delta Works project completed in 1987 along with the Kramer locks. We moored for the night inside the wall at the Hansweert locks at the south end of the Zuid-Beveland Canal. The area is filled with commercial boats. Pleasure craft are only allowed to moor here if there is no space at the recreational boat marina at the north end of the canal. Since their pontoons were removed for maintenance, we were able to stop here at Hansweert instead. We much preferred this location, with its great view to the commercial traffic in the canal, and spent ages on the flybridge watching the ships pass through. At upper left, the orange 291-foot cargo vessel Wilma can be seen departing the harbor. The ship then appears on the other side of the wall, entering the Hansweert locks. We reached Antwerp on our fifth day of travel from Amsterdam, passing through two locks. The first was to enter the river Scheldt from Hansweert, and the second was to exit the river and into the docks at Antwerp. Here we are entering the Hansweert lock behind three commercial boats. A large commercial barge entered the Hansweert lock beside us after we were inside. You can see the wash from their bow thruster and from the barge directly in front of us. Unlike the tug wash we encountered in the Kiel Canal a year ago, This one didn't push us around much. Unlike the past two locks we've been through, this one has no basin specifically for recreational boats, likely because there is less recreational boat traffic here. The more common Standing Mast Route joins the River Scheldt farther west at the mouth. Because we're heading east to Antwerp, we decided to take the shorter route through the Zuid-Beveland Canal instead. After a drop of a few feet, we're ready to exit the lock. The skipper of the boat that come in after us offered to let us go first, but we're not on the clock and opted to let them exit first. We don't mind being in close quarters with these boats because the crews are amazingly precise and careful with their boats. We're now entering the River Scheldt on a 30-mile run to Antwerp. Traffic is heavy in the river, with ships coming and going from the busy port of Antwerp. We've just crossed the border from the Netherlands into Belgium, but we won't need to complete any clearance formalities when we arrive into Antwerp, because both countries are part of the Schengen immigration area and the EU customs zone. Just beyond the border is the northern end of the port of Antwerp, the second largest seaport in Europe after Rotterdam. Only a small part of the port is riverside along the Scheldt, the rest is inland behind locks. Not visible on the left are the Berendrecht and Zandvliet locks, the second and third largest sea locks in the world. River traffic passes surprisingly close to the Doel nuclear power station, visible on the right on the banks of the River Scheldt. The 4-reactor plant has a capacity of nearly 3,000 megawatts. Ahead on the right is the approach to the Kattendijkdok Lock, currently the largest sea lock in the world. The Kattendijkdok Lock is 1,600 feet long, 223 feet wide, and 58 feet deep. By comparison, this is over twice the size of the huge lock at the Bonneville Dam along the Columbia River on the U.S. West Coast. The signal's coming up on the right, or for the Panamax-sized Callow Lock that is 1,200 feet long by 164 feet wide. Across the Scheldt from the Callow Lock, Total's huge refinery and petrochemical platform is the third largest in Europe and recently underwent a €1 billion upgrade. The refinery produces 338,000 barrels per day, and a new steam cracker could produce 1.1 million tons. The skyline of downtown Antwerp is now visible in the distance. We're getting close. We're nearly even with downtown Antwerp and are as far upriver as we'll go. With the city's skyline visible ahead, we're turning back downriver to wait for the commercial traffic to exit the Royerssluis so we can lock through. We're now entering Royerssluis to reach Antwerp's interior dock system. Unlike most of the locks we passed through in the Netherlands, where we ran a line amidships around a bollard and tended it, in the Royerssluis the lock tender attaches our line to a shoreside bollard, similar to the ballard locks in Seattle. So we needed to switch to our longer 50-foot lines for this process. A large commercial barge is coming in behind us, and we'll pull up to the front of the lock on our port side. Two smaller barges are following, and will tie off to the wall directly behind this. And beyond them, a fourth boat is entering on the far right, followed by another large barge at far left. Note the beautiful mural coming into view to port at bottom left as we rise in the locks. Antwerp is full of fantastic street art, and we're looking forward to seeing more. The barge beside us is underway before the gate is fully open, and we follow close behind. We have one more bridge to pass through before we can stop for the night. This bridge opens on demand, so we pass right through, being careful not to be blown sideways from the wash of the barges on the right. We're now in the Kattendijkdok, which was built in phases in the mid to late 1800s. Here I'm switching from the 50-foot lightweight lines we use for locking through to the shorter and heavier 1-inch lines we use for docking. Ahead of us is London Bridge, and beyond is our ultimate destination of Willemdok. But London Bridge had to undergo emergency repairs today, so we'll be spending the night at the bridge waiting place, and we'll pass through first thing tomorrow morning. It was a great spot for our first night in Antwerp. The next day we took the first opening through into Willemdok. London Bridge opens roughly every hour between 6 a.m. and midnight, with longer gaps around rush hour. It was still quite dark, but our berth was right on the end and easy to approach. And here we are, moored at our destination of beautiful Willemdok in Antwerp, ready to explore the city. Thanks for riding along. You can read more about our trip around the world at mvdirona.com, including an interactive map showing our track with a live update of our current location.